Hi, Jack Canfield here. Welcome back to another segment of Hollywood Live. My next guest is a fascinating man, Chris Jarvis. He's a mathematician. He's the author of 14 books. He solves difficult financial problems for people. We're going to find out what kind of problems he solves and how he does that. Welcome, Chris.
Jack, thank you so much.
Glad to have you here. So just before we get into more specific questions, just give us a little bit more of a sense of who you are and what exactly you do.
Okay, so I'm an applied mathematician by training. What does that mean? It means I solve problems, but I don't solve problems for universities. I solve problems for family offices, successful businesses. The more successful you are, the more complicated your problems, and we specialize in coming in and helping with those problems.
Give me an example.
We help large firms put together better employment and retention programs that get the employees really excited. Things that are more tax efficient for the executives, things that increase the value of the firm. That's one example.
Give me a second one.
A second example, we help wealthy families that want to find ways to not only prepare the money for the kids, but maybe prepare the kids for the money. So when you have a multi-generational business, it's very complicated. You have kids and cousins and nieces and nephews, and it's a complicated dynamic to run any business, but to run a family business is very complicated. So you have to balance the psychology with the math and the finance.
You told me before we came on air too about you work with law firms where you're trying to figure out how to buy out partners and all of that. Now, when you were 15 years old, were you sitting around thinking, I want to grow up and solve financial problems for people? Or was there a certain moment in your life when you said, wow, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, when I was 15, I wanted to solve my big baseball contract problem, which like many 15-year-olds, didn't end up coming to fruition.
Right.
So I have no tax problems with my financial contract for being a baseball player. So when I was a little older, my parents were divorced, and like many people who are successful, I started with relatively modest, if not humble, roots. My mother's husband, my stepfather, died, and I watched her really struggle with the financial and emotional complexities. So I don't know that I had an epiphany and said, I'm going to help people not have financial and emotional problems tied to money, but I think it was the seed of inception that got me thinking I'd love to help people, and if I could help them avoid these problems with money that stop them from being who they could be, then I think that's what happened.
So when you look at your field, I don't know exactly what to call it, even like financial strategy, financial planning, whatever it might be, and you look at that industry, what would you say the state of that industry is compared to what you're doing?
I think it's more unstable than people would think. And if I had to pick an industry, I might pick financial services, I might pick professional services, I might pick management consulting, people who advise other wealthy families and businesses about money-related or financial-related issues. I think that they're a victim of their own success. They've become so big because they've helped so many people over the decades or centuries, in the case of banks, that now they have so much infrastructure that they can't help but focus on how do I keep the machine going? How do I keep the train on the rails? So they're focusing a lot on the products they have and how do they feed the machine they've built. And I think that people are starting to worry, who's working for who? And are they just trying to feed their overhead, or are they really trying to help me as the client succeed? So I think there's some disruption ready to happen.
Now, do you work alone? You have other people, partners?
I have a partner and I have a small staff. I've done the big staff thing, and I find that the small staff thing is much more innovative. So we try and focus on innovation, not overhead. So we have 3 internal people and then a few dozen close related folks in other industries or in tangential areas of our firm, of what we do, that we can refer business out to without having to have the giant office and all the overhead.
Can you give me an example of someone you've helped recently where you said, okay, this was really something unique we did for them?
Yeah, we had a very large family, so a family office with money in many countries, billion-dollar net worth, lost the patriarch, and now it was time to manage some of the very difficult complexities of having money in different countries. How do we move the money back into the US without subjecting it to some very large tax penalties? So we had to create an interesting structure that gave the people the money they needed so that they could continue their business operations that were a family, give the younger people some money so they could live. And so it was just a complicated financial transaction, which is maybe not all that interesting as saying I invented a new Girl Scout cookie or something, but it was, so that was the most recent case that we worked on.
I bet it was important to them.
I think it was very important to them that they feel like their family is now not getting broken up by the financial complexities of the death of someone who led their family for decades.
Right. Now, you may have already answered this in the sense of being lean and mean as opposed to being huge, but when you look at your group, your company, and you compare it to other companies, you've been very successful, and you're very bright. I got that just in talking to you briefly before we came on air. What would you say your unique selling proposition is, or what makes you as good as you are compared to the competition that's out there?
Yeah, we like to say innovation, not overhead. So we want to solve problems. And where we get that is by just asking. So we sit down and ask questions. What is it you really want to accomplish? Why haven't you got there? Why aren't you getting this from other people? What are you unhappy about? And our symbol is the giraffe, so Jarvis Tower, the firm. A tower is a group of giraffes. And what we're trying to help people do is elevate their perspective, like a giraffe, so they can see a better path. And then we say, be the giraffe. So that's our tagline to get people to think differently. And that came from years of meetings when we would ask people, was this meeting helpful? And if they said yes, we would go a little further rather than pat ourselves on the back and say, okay, we did a nice job. We'd ask why, or how was it helpful? And they would normally say, I'm looking at this problem very differently now. And we realized that that was the best thing we could do, was give people a chance to see things differently, just by asking questions as opposed to focusing on one outcome that was the outcome we may have wanted.
Very good, very good. I love the draft metaphor. That's very good. Now, if you were to go back in time to when you were younger, starting out with your company, or just starting out in this field, and give yourself some advice. We got a lot of people watching who are entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, people thinking of maybe leaving a big company, going out on their own. What advice would you give to that younger you or to them?
I would say it's going to be hard. I would say you are different, and it's okay to be different. You're going to try very hard to fit into a lot of companies, into a lot of roles, into a lot of titles, into a lot of industries, and think that you found the place. But as an entrepreneur and innovator, you're going to be alone. It's just part of what this looks like. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means you may want to spend a little more time focusing on you being okay, be who you are, and don't try and find the box, because you're just not going to be happy in a box. And if I could have given myself that advice to just be okay with being me, be okay with being different, and not try and don't alienate yourself from people, but don't try and categorize yourself so much. Try and appreciate and accept yourself. That I think that would have saved me a lot of aggravation and probably accelerated some happiness.
I'm sure it would have. So I wish we had more time. You're a fascinating guy. I'd love to talk to you about all 14 of your books, but we don't have time to do that. So if you were to let people know how to contact you, because I'm sure I'm sitting here going, maybe I should talk to this guy. Where do they go? How do they find you?
So the website is Jarvis Tower, JarvisTower.com. All the phone numbers are there, the email, Twitter, Instagram, all the good stuff that some I'm very good with and some I'm not so good with, but the website's definitely up. So they can find us through there. We're in Dallas, but I've lived in both coasts and we have clients all over the world. So
very good. Chris Jarvis at JarvisTower.com. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right, you stick around. We'll be right back after this message.